This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad. And I hope you're still rejoicing when I'm done, because I know you could have been on the 8:30 bus. So hopefully you'll be glad and still be rejoicing. I'm grateful to Dr. Dockery and his gracious invitation. I hope that was recorded. I'll be seeing one of my kids later today. I would love for him to watch that. So thank you, Dr. Dockery. I was going to tell the story about Dr. Drew Flam, my good friend, which led me to this wonderful event and be with family amongst my work. To follow up on what Larry said, I'm also not in the youth group. I am out in the world at Indiana University, public university, whose logo resembles the devil's pitchfork. If you think about it, it's even red, maybe not coincidentally. So as I pray for you as a leader in Christian higher education, please pray for the Christ followers who are in public education as well. And we can pray for one another and support our work. So, who am I and why am I here and how did I get here? And I'll tell a little bit more about the story about Drew Flam in just a moment. Take a little bit of look at some nice biblical encouragement on our fundraising. And then from our school, give you some of the latest information on charitable giving and philanthropy here in the United States. So first of all, I started as a radio sportscaster. I did that for 10 years and moved out to a network job in Washington, D.C. And while I was there, read a book, now it's a long time ago now, and I know some of you have read this book as well, Kingdoms in Conflict by Charles Colson. It was kind of a coming home for me to reintroduce myself to Nancy last night and reconnect with her because I ended up reading that book, and as I did, the Lord said to me, Bill, this is a true story, the brain you're using for baseball scores and football statistics and new policies at the NCAA, I want you to use that to think about poverty, education, criminal justice, housing, and so forth. And that just was an inflection point in my career. So I thought, hey, I live near Reston, Virginia. I'm just going to call Chuck Colson and ask for an internship, right? And so I did, and they hooked me up with this guy. Are any of the Colson Center folks here by chance? I'm wondering. Does anybody know who this is? This is Roberto Rivera. And while Nancy and Chuck were creating Breakpoint, about a year and a half into that, I called Prison Fellowship, and they sent me on to Roberto. He was the main researcher for that new Breakpoint ministry. And they said, well, you've got a journalism background, you can research. And I had a master class in all things Christian apologetics applied to social policy out in the world from Roberto. And I had a chance to attend the Colson Center event a few years ago and was so fortunate to have this photo with my mentor. And so that was a changing point for me. And I share that as a word of encouragement for you because it's either happening already or it will. There are going to be students speaking someday, and they're going to be standing next to you in a picture and saying, this is the one that changed my life. Keep that in mind as you do your work in education. So that was a changing point for me. The Lord led me to a staff position in the United States Senate. I worked in the mayor's office in Indianapolis, led a nonprofit for 17 years, and then was called into Indiana University, where I lead the fundraising school, which is part of the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, the world's only school dedicated to the study of philanthropic behavior. And as I've done this work, the Lord has placed something new on my heart, along with my partner, my wife. We'll be celebrating our 33rd wedding anniversary in April. And Carmen is a major gift officer for Wheeler Mission. It's the gospel homeless mission in Indianapolis. And she's been doing that work for the last several years. And I have volunteered at places like Shepherd Community Center, a wonderful evangelical youth center in a developing neighborhood in Indianapolis. And as we support our local crisis pregnancy center and are active through our congregation, I've really seen a need and a hunger for evangelical groups to need more information about fundraising. And I'm just going to be candid with you. Some of them might not want to come into Indiana University, and I get that. There might be a concern, right? So Carmen and I, you see the logo there, the Biblical Generosity Institute, is what the Lord has placed on our heart, and that's the conversation I was having with Drew in his office when he was asking me, like, what's the next chapter in your life, Bill? And I said, I'd really like to bring this information within the family of evangelical believers and make sure they have access to this. Certainly, trusting the Lord for his provision. Matthew 6:33 was, is, and will always be true. Seek first his kingdom, and your needs will be met. I believe that. But with some rare exceptions, like manna falling out of the sky or, the angel showing up to cook dinner, usually we have to be active ourselves to join the Lord in that provision and receive that from him. And so having that conversation with Drew, said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to introduce you to Dr. David Dockery, and maybe they'll invite you to IACE. So that's why I'm here. We've put together a curriculum if you are interested in an elective for your students, biblically based fundraising, but also it's especially on my heart if you want to reach out in a non-credit way to your local Christian ministries in your city, your state, your region. We're glad to have that conversation as well. So that's who I am. That's why I'm here. And what I want to do with the rest of my time, which I want to be very faithful to, because I want to learn from Greg today just as much as you do about all the important legal issues that we're facing. What we're going to look at is some encouragement from the Bible on the importance of fundraising. And then we'll take a look at some of the most recent trends and data that are available. And as I do, I also just want to recognize there are some of you, the philanthropy data will be very familiar. You're experienced, you have a high level of expertise, and I hope this will be an affirmation for you today. All right? Others of you are saying, well, I've got some new staff folks, and well, hopefully, even though I have the expertise, here's the latest, most relevant information that I can train my new team members with. And some of you are new yourself, and I hope you'll see value as you're starting your career in advancement. So I understand we have different learning levels, different experience levels, and I hope this applies for all of you. All right. So there's your basic fundraising plan, right? You have your annual fund, your major gifts, your capital campaigns, your planned gifts, and also just donor stewardship overall. Of course, what an annual fund we have in Acts of the Apostles, right? Where everybody brings all of their wealth to the feet of the apostles. So we see an annual fund there in Acts. How about major gifts, where we see Zacchaeus gives half of his wealth to the poor after encountering Jesus? That's quite a major gift, wasn't it? Half of his wealth. That's really quite spectacular. And maybe some of you right now are thinking like, I actually have a major gift donor meeting coming up. I'm going to tell them that story, right? Why don't you give half your wealth to my university? This one blew me away. When you look in 1 Chronicles, David makes the first gift to the capital campaign in the building of the temple. And the word continues that after he made this gift, the others followed his example with great joy and enthusiasm. That's how a capital campaign runs. And by the way, the value of David's gift in today's dollars, $10.4 billion. That would be the equivalent today, according to AI and Copilot, when I asked them while getting ready for this presentation. Because they looked at the value of the gold and the silver and the different things. $10.4 billion would be the equivalent in today's money. How about planned giving, right? Barnabas sold his land and gave the proceeds to the apostles, just like a planned gift. Some of you are on land that's donated. In fact, I would venture to guess maybe every school here has their campus on donated land, or maybe land that was sold at a tremendous discount from a generous donor. Right? So we see planned giving, and then donor stewardship. This is so important. Donor stewardship is staying in touch with our donors in ways that don't always involve asking them for more money. And basically the entire book of Philippians can be understood as a donor thank you letter. Right? There's that particular passage in chapter 4 that I've highlighted there. And by the way, I love that you're taking photos of me, and I'm really, really flattered. Thank you. Or the slides, but Dr. Docker, I'm glad you have the slides. If not, I'll email them to you, and you're glad to have them and use them for your teams. And keep taking pictures, too, and I don't mind being in them. But anyway, and it's very interesting. Philippians, it's there for a reason, because you know where the church of Philippi started, and we'll talk about that just in a moment. But this is one of my favorite verses when I think about fundraising in the Bible, that when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. First of all, this reminds us that prosperity is not a sin. Wealth is not a sin. In fact, ironically, just in my devotions this morning was the teaching from Timothy about it's the love of wealth that is the sin. And as my pastor, Dr. Brandon Shields, talks about, and I had this chat with him, he said, well, prosperity and wealth can't be a sin. We don't want all the non-Christians to have all the money, right? Kind of a good point. So it's okay for Christians to prosper, but why does the city rejoice? Even as we know there can be economic injustice, that there are challenges in our society, right? Why is prosperity celebrated when the righteous prosper? Because the righteous know where that wealth has come from. And the righteous know their responsibility to the Lord and to use that wealth wisely. And they're going to use it certainly on behalf of their congregations, but also broadly across society. That's why the city rejoices. That's the opportunity you're providing to your donors. That's the opportunity you're providing through your schools, is that the righteous people who have prospered can help the city, your campus, and the surrounding area rejoice because of the generosity opportunities that you're providing. Now, I'm going to need to ask a little liberty on this one, because I sometimes joke with fellow believers that the best-selling book of all time is a fundraising book, all right? Because the main character was a fundraiser. All right, I'm going to need a little liberty on this one. But in Luke chapter 10, Jesus sends out the 72. What does he tell them? Take all your stuff. Take all your belongings with you. Don't ask for anything. No. He says, don't take anything. Knock on doors. Ask. Jesus was teaching the 72 how to fundraise. All right, let it set in for a little while. You think about that during your prayer time. But he kind of was, right? He was inviting those 72 to find supporters who would give gifts to their ministry. So if it's okay for Jesus, it's okay for the rest of us. And which donors? This is very important, because we know the Lord loves them all. I was talking about the church of Philippi. We know that Lydia was a successful businesswoman. We know this, that she prospered because she sold purple linens, right? The most expensive linens. And therefore, we know that she was wealthy, and the teaching is and the understanding is she was making significant financial contributions to Paul's ministry, opened up her home on numerous occasions to Paul and his followers, and very likely it's believed that the church at Philippi started in her house, right? And some of you have those donors who have those houses where you're glad to have the events for other donors. That was Lydia, a woman of significant wealth who was called by the Lord to be generous. And yet the person who gave most, according to Jesus, was the widow. The 2 coins that she gave, again, according to AI, worth about $3.12, based on the amount of copper believed to be in those coins and what that copper is worth today. And Jesus said she gave the most because she gave it all. So we have Lydia, a woman of significant wealth. We have the widow, she gave the most. And this just hit me. I was talking to Ron at the Timothy group yesterday, and by the way, they have books filled with scriptural encouragement on fundraising and biblical teaching on generosity. Definitely commend those to you. But this just, you ever have those opportunities, no matter how many times you read something in the Bible and then some half sentence jumps out and you're like, oh, who went into my Bible and wrote that? I don't remember that being there last time. Remember that? Well, this was it for me when you read about Tabitha, because the story about Tabitha is that Peter raises her from the dead. So kind of a big story, and that's the one that we remember. But then when you see there's this little half sentence, right, that says she was always doing good and helping the poor. Isn't that interesting? This is how she's described. Not the spouse of somebody, maybe she wasn't married. Not the daughter of somebody. We see that throughout the Bible. This one is the daughter of this father, this father, this father, this father. But the Holy Spirit told Luke, when you describe Tabitha, you describe her as somebody who is kind and generous to the poor, which tells us it must have been true. Why would you make that up? Like if you're Luke, I'm like, I'm going to make up this story about Tabitha being raised from the dead. Let's just have her be generous to the poor. You'd have to believe that. And as so many apologetics teachers have said, I don't have enough faith to be that atheist, right? It's just too strong to be made up. And it wasn't that she had this kind of business. It wasn't that she had this kind of family. It was that her generosity to the poor. If they want to know which Tabitha was it, it's the one who's generous to the poor. So whether it's somebody who is a high-dollar donor to you, or somebody who is an entry-level donor to you, or somebody who's just a volunteer, all of this generosity is celebrated in the Bible, and we are called to follow that example as well. All right. Let's take a look at some of the charitable giving statistics. These might be familiar to you. They came out last June. They'll be updated in the June coming up. So the statistic here is this dollar amount, $557 billion, is the highest amount ever. And this report has been going on for about 6 decades. All right, so it's the most money ever donated in U.S. history. and you see where the money comes from. It looks like it's 67% from individuals, but about half the foundation total are individuals who create family foundations or are putting money into their donor-advised funds. And of course, bequests are made by individuals as well. So when you take about half the foundation pie slice, add it to the individuals and bequests, about 85% of charitable giving comes from individuals. Which individuals? I'm going to show you in just a moment, because there's a certain individual that is predominant in this pie chart. All right, so 85%, and that means our fundraising starts with individuals and ideally is supplemented by foundations and corporations. Where does this money go? 9 different subsets here, and you see religion, and I'm here to say that's not you. Religion, by the way, it's defined by Giving USA, is the place of worship or the denominational office. All right, so it's the church and the denominational office, and yes, in our pluralistic society, other faiths and their denominational offices as well. You are found in the education pie slice if you're here with a university or a college, all right? And about 2/3 of the education pie slice is post-secondary education. The other third is K through 12. Certainly our parochial, our Christian schools, a lot of our public school districts are starting private foundations following the college model. So you see yourself, and usually education and human services kind of flip-flop back and forth for second on the list after religion. Now, you may have heard, if you follow the philanthropic media, that there was some angst about this year's data because people were saying that the giving actually went down. And what they were talking about was inflation. All right, so it's important to notice when you see these data about charitable giving, ask, are they taking inflation into account, either as a way to celebrate or as a way to be concerned about the data? These are the data in current dollars, the value of the dollar the year the dollar was donated. And as you can see from all of the sources, the blue lines are the most recent data year. They're all in positive territory, meaning if you accounted for inflation in your budgets, and those budgets guided your fundraising goals, and you achieved your fundraising goals, you absolutely can rely on the current dollar data to guide your planning, okay? And you should be taking inflation into account, as we do in our household budgets and everything else that we think about economically. This is what caused the concern. After adjusting for inflation, except for bequests, all the source categories were in negative territory. But again, if you're hearing those reports that charitable giving went down, it really only went down if you weren't taking inflation into account in your fundraising goals. Now, you look at the destinations, look at that. In terms of current dollars, all 9 subsectors, including yours, in positive territory in the most recent statistical year, and only 2 went down when adjusted for inflation. That's remarkable. When you think about all the sources were negative after inflation, but the destinations are all positive except 2, and the 2 are very understandable. The top one is religion, and the one towards the bottom is international. What we're finding is the congregations that are not set up for digital giving are the ones that are falling behind, right? Because we do still have some folks who, even though the worst of COVID is over, are still now worshiping from home. If you're not set up for digital giving in a congregation space, you're likely suffering that negative result. And the other is international. And international giving, for better or for worse, is usually driven by crises. A tsunami hits, there's an earthquake, there's a war that starts when one country decides they want to invade another one, and so forth. And when those are diminished, usually international giving goes down when there are fewer of those incidents in a given year. So basically, the takeaway here is a lot of positive momentum of charitable giving in that last report, especially if you're taking inflation into account. Now, my wedding anniversary is coming up April 4th, and Carmen, I just want to announce to you, this is my gift to you. We're going to hang this in the family room. I know you're going to weep. It'll be joy, not like, what is he thinking? All right, you laugh. By the time I'm done, you're going to be on Shutterfly. You're going to be on Etsy. You're going to be putting this on a hat. You're going to be putting this on a T-shirt. You're going to be putting it on a Stanley, okay? There's a lot of good data in this for fundraisers. I'm a big fan of not comparing one year to another, and a lot of you are researchers and scholars. I think you'll join me in that. I like the multi-year trends, right? It gives you a better picture instead of the one-year snapshot. And that's what I love about this 40-year snapshot. First of all, if you start from the bottom left and go up to the top right, the line is the current dollar value. The bars are the constant, adjusted for inflation, all right? Regardless of how you measure, the slope is upward. Great job, fundraisers. Charitable giving continues to increase over these 4 decades. Second of all, you look, what are those gold bars about? Those gold bars are years of recession. And we always get this question, is there going to be a recession? And the answer, of course, is yes. That's not the right question. The question is, when is there going to be a recession? We're in a market economy. A recession happens at least once every 10 years. So the best time to fundraise for a recession is now, to build up that operating reserve and to cultivate close relationships with your donors, because we know donors tend to stay with the nonprofits and schools with which they have the closest relationships during times of economic downturn. So stewardship is just the morally right thing to do. You're that one person in the story Jesus tells who goes back and says thank you consistently, right? But it also leads to a better chance of more fundraising in the future, including during times of economic downturn, because as you can see from the gold bars, charitable giving doesn't go to zero. In fact, on average, charitable giving goes down about 0.5% after we adjust for inflation. Basically holds serve and breaks even during times of economic downturn. The other positive takeaway is when the recessions end, charitable giving is restored, and usually fairly quickly. All right? And so again, we just need to prepare for it, plan for it. Will there be belt tightening? Of course, we all have to go through it, but we can prepare for it and know that there's still a sense of possibility. And then lastly, again, when you look at that multi-year comparison, and there's some good studies out that say, hey, we're down from 2020, we're down from 2021. And we just want to say, you know, there were 2 outside shocks, very unique shocks in our society that unnaturally bolstered charitable giving in those 2 years. The first was COVID-19 and the huge charitable response to COVID-19. And then after the death of George Floyd and the racial, what I like to call racial reconciliation movement, consistent with Revelation, when all nations' tongues and people will be gathered around the throne room of Christ, that led to a huge spark in charitable giving for a short amount of time. I instead, and then both of those diminished in influence. That's why I like to compare to 2019. That was before COVID, before what we saw happen after the death of George Floyd. So there's 2019, and you see 2023, we are way ahead of where we were, both in terms of current dollars and constant dollars. We're definitely, we're not just back to normal, we're ahead of where normal was before those 2 external shocks happened to charitable giving. Again, a lot of confidence. And darling, that's why this will be hanging in our family room when we get home. No? Okay. Basement? Garage? No? Garage maybe. Okay. All right. And the rest of you, I can see you're on Shutterfly. You want to get this on your stuff. All right. So what our school examines a lot of economic indicators and tries to predict charitable giving in the coming year. And they do say, even though we're scientists, we do this with great humility. You know, this is one of those when you see we'll see all the investment commercials watching the Super Bowl Sunday, you know, past performance does not guarantee future success. So our researchers say the same thing. But when they look at the economic indicators, all the numbers are green. Red numbers are bad, green numbers are good, and they're all green from all the sources. We're expecting, based on the wealth indicators of giving, that 2025 should be a very positive year in charitable giving. And let me just say this, the most important factor of your fundraising ever is your relationship with your donors, period, end of story. People are giving out of their philanthropic values and their motivations, and you are aligning those with the work of your school, your institute, your department, your athletic department, whatever you're raising money for. That is first and foremost always. But then we have the economic factors, the wealth factors that determine how much people can give and how often. And that's what this looks at, is the wealth effect of giving looks very positive. And a big reason is the stock market. There is a very close correlation between the S&P 500 and charitable giving in the United States. I don't have time to go into why. The line graph here shows you as the market's going up, charitable giving goes up. As the market goes down, charitable giving goes down. All right, it's the closest correlation we have in all of our schools' research related to the wealth effect of charitable giving. So from January 1 to December 31, when the market goes up, the following year, charitable giving tends to go up. The opposite is true. January 1 to December 31, the market goes down. Charitable giving tends to go down. Well, we know at the end of 23, the market went up 24%. Does anybody remember the percentage at the end of 24? You know roughly, yeah, big number again, 23. This is a big reason why charitable giving is expected to go up in 25. The foundations have more money. They're invested in the market. They're required to give away 5%. Now, I didn't take a lot of math at Northwestern, but 5% of a bigger number is a bigger number that they're now required to give away. If the economy's doing well, businesses give out of their profits. We're expecting that to happen. But individuals either have and or feel more wealthy. And again, wealth effect. Relationships most important, but wealth effect. We have a big flashing green light from the stock market, which, by the way, is in positive territory. Here we are 5 weeks into the new year. Now, there's some new research out on donor confidence. This is from our good friend Rick Dunham. Maybe some of you know Rick. He's a believer, former pastor, went into fundraising consulting, has a wonderful international consulting firm. And works with a wide range of nonprofits, including those in the evangelical Christian faith. And he found out in his most latest survey that 39% of the people who he surveyed, you see it here, expect the economy to improve this year, and that's one of the best results as he does this survey. It's the best result in 5 years. So a lot of economic confidence. If you add the people who say the economy is going to improve or at least stay the same, that's nearly 2/3 of the people in his survey. That's up from 56%. And then you say, well, how does charitable giving look? And people say that I'm going to increase in 2024, how much did I give? And when they reported what they gave compared to other years, the increase was faster than inflation. And then the 80% of them said, I'm going to give at least the same amount, if not more. That's the best response since 2021. So the donors themselves are saying, we know the economy's not perfect. We know it's not the same for everybody else, but we think the economy is going to be at least as good, if not better. We actually gave more last year than we did the year before, and 80% of us are saying we're going to give the same amount or even more. Another nice green light for charitable giving related to the wealth effect, right? Not that relational effect with which you have most importance. Now, this study just came out from the American Bible Society. Maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't. It came out just in December, and they looked at who's making these donations. And the first thing they did is they said, we're going to come up with a definition of people who are scripture engaged. They have a high frequency of leading the word. The Bible is central to who they are, and they report that reading the Bible has a positive impact on their relationship with God and others. All right? So if you met those criteria, then they said, well, tell us about your charitable giving. 94% of them donate. 94%. You know what our school reports is the average household giving? 50%. So you take them out, that 50 is going to be even lower. Scripture-engaged people are twice as likely to donate than the average population. Who are your donors? Very likely to be scripture-engaged, right? That's great news. And you look at the donation amounts, 71% donate at least $1,000, 17% at least $10,000, 85%, yes, they donate to their congregations, but to all religious causes. Another word of encouragement from these survey data. But they didn't stop there. They said, well, what about a practicing Christian, somebody who attends church? Now, their definition was interesting. Attend church just once a week. I think our pastors might disagree with that definition of practicing, right? I often seen these data, and it'd be interesting to see what Ryan Burge says about that, but you always hear like 3 times out of 4 weeks or things like that. But for the American Bible Society, it's just the once a month. That's fine. It's their definition. No such thing as perfect research study, right? And that they strongly agree that faith is very important in their life. How do they donate? 93% donate, 2.5 times greater than non-Christians. Average giving, nearly $6,000, 4 times greater than non-Christians. 52% donate between $1,000 and $10,000. Another 15% donate $10,000 or more. That means 67% of them combined together, while for non-Christians it's only 14%, right? And then lastly, the practicing Christians donate 9% of their income. All right, sanctification, a lifelong process. They're not quite to 10% yet, but they're getting there. The nominal Christian, 2%. The non-Christian, 0%. So who are your donors? very likely scripturally engaged, very likely practicing Christians. And when I told you, when we looked at that Giving USA data, there's a certain group of people who are predominant in the data. Here they are, the scripturally engaged, the practicing Christians. In fact, in their summary, the American Bible Society said that it's not Christian donors, it's actually evangelical donors are leading the way in average amount donated, percentage of people donating, percentage given to their church, and any religious charity. Now, does that mean manna is just going to fall out of the sky? Maybe. It's happened before, but you still need to do your work, of course. Identifying donors, cultivating those relationships, stewarding your donors, right, in this biblical context. The possibilities are there. Is it easy work? No. But the possibilities are there, and that's the message that I want to bring to you here today. All right? I want to give you some other data. I know Ryan talked yesterday about millennials. Did not know that he was going to do that. I incorporated some what we know about millennials and their economic condition and their charitable giving behaviors. All right? How am I doing on time? How much time do I have left? I want to make sure I see. Good. About 15 minutes. Great. Thank you, David. First of all, those of you, and I love what Larry said, that his kids were off his payroll. And I noticed, like, Carmen did one of these, because we have 4, they're all adults, so we just got a big raise in our household, right? And you know what I'm saying? I used to go to the Costco twice a month. Now we go about twice a year, because the 55-gallon drum of peanut butter lasts a lot longer now that the kids are out of the house. Those of you who are older parents, you can relate. But the millennials, oh, woe is us. We had the Great Recession. We had COVID. You were economically behind. Well, Jean Twenge's work at Penn, she wrote that book, Generations, and she actually said, it's interesting. When I look at the data, the millennials are actually doing just as well, if not better, than when their parents were millennial age, and especially when their grandparents were millennial age. And what's really interesting about the millennials, they actually entered the workforce at a later age because they went to college. So they took another 4 or 6 or 8 years before they went into the workforce, and they're still doing as well or better economically than their predecessors did, their parents and their grandparents. And that's basically a summarization of the data that you see here. Do they have it easy? Of course not. But it's also not the gloom and doom that you sometimes hear about. Twenge's research shows that the millennials are doing well economically, especially compared to their ancestors. Now, does that show up in the charitable giving data? And the answer is yes. Take a look at this. I hope you can see this. Now, the boomers, the red numbers here kind of rank the 4 generations. So we have boomers, X, so grandparents, think about parents, the millennials, and the Gen Zs, all right? The boomers still number 1 at $3,256 a year household giving, and that's a 22% increase from the previous survey 2 years ago. Look who's number 2 in charitable giving now, the millennials, ahead of their parents, $1,600 compared to almost $1,400. And while their parents went up 12%, the millennials went up 22%. It's showing up in charitable giving. Gen Z coming in at 4th, all right? A couple of other data points as it relates to all of our donors, then I'll come back to millennials in a moment. Everybody is digital, even the boomers, and that makes total sense, right? The boomers were told, hey, however you thought about what happened with COVID, some of them were like, I can't go into the grocery store. I need to learn how to order groceries online. So they did. They figured out digital. Or my grandkids can't visit me. Now I have to figure out Zoom or FaceTime or any of these things. Everybody's now digital, and it's showing up in the charitable giving data that even our seasoned citizens will donate to your school through digital methods. In fact, the generation making the most gifts online are the boomers. Bottom right corner, number 1. How about that? Not the Z, not the millennial. The grandparents are number 1 in digital. They're like, hold my phone, right? Watch me give online. All right. So we see the millennials have passed their parents in average household giving. The boomers are online. Who do you think wants to see direct mail? And some of you might be thinking, direct mail, come on, Bill Stan. It's 2025. Direct mail? How many of you during the holiday season received a catalog from a for-profit company? For me, Bass Pro Shop. Make my annual visit in the spring to get the lures and the bobbers and get all the fishing equipment. Use my credit card. In November, I'm getting the Bass Pro Shop catalog. Our private sector folks measure every penny. Every penny is a prisoner, the business folks like to say. they're still spending a lot of money on hard copy catalogs. Why? It must work or they wouldn't do it. It works in charitable giving as well. I would encourage you to maintain your direct mail outreach, okay? Where Carmen works at Wheeler, they went from $700,000 a year to about $22 million a year. Most of that gain over 2 decades was through direct mail to strangers, who then continued to give year after year and now are giving at higher amounts. Direct mail still works. Guess what? Especially for millennials. In the survey, the millennials had the most interest in direct mail. And when I teach for the fundraising school and in my academic courses, and I bring this up, the millennials are like, yeah, as a matter of fact, that's right. Now, some of them do feed the millennial stereotype. Somebody wrote a letter to me. And we're like, well, you and 10,000 other people. But okay, that's fine. You can feel that. And if you're a millennial, sorry, not sorry. But anyway, just kidding. But what the millennials also say is our whole life is online. Emails and the social media and the websites and streaming the TV and all the things. And now I can read something on a piece of paper. And I can set that piece of paper down on my desk at home and have it there when it comes time to think about my bills and my contributions. And so not only is direct mail not dead, this youngest generation is saying, send us some more. All right, so keep that in mind with the millennials. This study just came out this week. You're one of the first public audiences to see these data on millennials and Gen Z from our school. Religion, number 1 in Giving USA, still number 1 amongst millennials and Gen Z. And this was not a study of people of religious faith, let alone the evangelical faith. This is broadly speaking, millennials and Gen Z overall, religion's still a top priority, all right? And those who give to religion are less likely to give to secular causes in these generations. A little bit different from their parents and their grandparents, who were also the ones who would donate to the zoo, the museum, maybe the secular youth agency in addition to their faith giving. Less true about the millennials and Gen Z. Their second priority is basic needs, all right? Now, environment and social justice, less interest in education and the arts. You might go, wah, 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 less interest in education. But what are you seeing in these data? You are faith-based. Do your students have needs? We have a donation into a food pantry for our students. You maybe have some of that on your campus, or needs for students who can't afford that trip overseas except for a donated scholarship or a stipend, right? So if I'm seeing these data, I'm thinking, okay, where are these donors? And if they're not just going to give flat out to education, what are the aspects of my work that they are interested in? And I'm seeing religion and I'm seeing basic needs. Now, social justice, I understand. Working at Indiana University, there are a lot of different ways different folks define this. But when you talk about bringing peace into the world, when you talk about reconciliation, when you talk about your definition, my definition of social justice, I take, friends, Isaiah 51. Let us be the builder of broken walls and the restorer of the streets. Isaiah 51 is a social justice call for us as believers, different probably from the one we're hearing out in the culture. But can you meet millennials there, especially those in the faith? Right? I share with Drew, as you probably know, they have this wonderful environmental center. I think that gives I think Grace has a huge advantage to tap into the environmental interests of the Gen Z and the millennial, because they have that environmental center, because we don't have a lot of lakes in Indiana, but they're all near Grace College, and Grace College is taking advantage of that. So again, do with these data what you will. You know your college and your context. I'm not telling you what to do, just trying to show you the data and maybe help you apply it as you think about it. All right, so philanthropy has a broader definition for the younger generations. Ethical purchasing. If I buy the right kind of shoes, the right kind of glasses, the right kind of ice cream because of what that company stands for, that's philanthropy. They also tell us when I tip, I'm going to tip more than 20%, and that's my philanthropy. So there's a broader understanding of philanthropy. Here's another one, and we're starting a new course on this, impact investing. They don't want to just give the traditional philanthropic gift. They want to invest in a way that maybe they expect a financial return. Are you set up for impact investing? It's growing, especially amongst our millennials, because the millennials, if they are prospering, probably have created their own business or invented their own technology device that's really taken off. Maybe they've made partner, maybe they've made doctor, right? Medical doctor, those types of higher paying professions. But impact investing is something that we need to be ready for with this generation. And this is huge and not surprising. Social media is central to their lives. It's also central to their philanthropy, and there's plenty of research that backs that up. They go online for entertainment and social interaction. When they're active philanthropically online, they're looking for entertainment and social interaction. A boring post isn't going to do it. Now, I'm not saying put cats in roller skates, because that's what they're seeing on the social media, but it needs to be engaging. And social interaction, this is true about all digital fundraising. The first word is social. People go online to check out the people who they know in entertaining and engaging ways. Are your students using their social on behalf of your school in material you can provide to them? Your alumni, your board members, your faculty, reaching out to their social networks. Think about the Ice Bucket Challenge. ALS asked nobody for a gift and raised over $200 million because people asked the people who they knew to dump water on their heads, right? Social media is social, especially for our millennials. It's also known that millennials will actually go online and see if they learn about your school, learn about a Wheeler, learn about a nonprofit, and see, are any of my social media people supporting that charity? Or I might put it out there. Has anybody heard of this group? Anybody volunteer for this group? So social media, of course, is essential for all of our generations, as we saw, but especially for the millennials, and especially for Gen Z, that taps into their desire for both entertainment and engagement and checking you out, but then also, if they become your donor, asking them to spread the word through their vast social media networks. All right, a couple quick points on two other things, then I'll be done. Donor advised funds, just so you know, these are big. Look at the increase, 14% increase. It took us about 90 years to get the first 1 million donor advised funds in the United States, and in the last 5 years, we have another 800,000. That's how fast donor advised funds are growing. If you don't know what a donor advised fund is, it's kind of like a savings account, except once you put the money in, you can't take it out for yourself. Once it's in, it can only go to a qualified 501c3 nonprofit like your school, okay? And it's a way more and more people are donating. We see here who they are. It is primarily the boomers. About half of the folks are boomers right now. You see that most of the folks are not millionaires. These are people of middle income wealth are creating donor advised funds. You are allowed to stay anonymous when you give out of your donor advised fund. Fortunately, only about 4% of people are doing that. There is a concern because you get a tax deduction right away when the money goes into the DAF, that people are using this for a tax shelter. Look at that, though. Only 11% of DAF holders put money in every year. Don't you think if it was a tax shelter, that percentage would be so much higher? All right, I got to shelter my wealth from tax. I'm just put money in donor advised fund, so I don't have to pay the tax, and it never has to come out. That's the fear about donor advised funds. But only 11% of the people are putting it in every year. Look at that third bullet point. More than half give away all their money within 8 years. I don't know any foundations doing that, right? So why do people open donor advised funds? This is important. If you know somebody is a DAF holder, they tend to be our most strategic donors. They're putting the money there to give it a think, to just wait for the right moment. And they've been at silver level at your school, they want to get up to gold level. So they're putting the money in the donor advised fund until they get to gold level, and then out it comes. Or they wait for a tragedy, like a city burning down, a hurricane hitting somewhere, some sort of a urgent situation. And they want to be able to make a big difference. So if you know somebody has a donor advised fund, these are our most strategic donors, and you can be talking with them with that understanding that they love strategy, they love big impact, even more than a non-DAF holder. And we see them being very popular. By the way, did you love that presentation yesterday in AI for Michael? Wow, that was great. What a peek behind the curtain with his corporate background and what they're doing at Biola with that AI lab. I'm like, man, I'm going to get another bachelor's degree. I'm going to go learn that AI at Biola, man. That was good. And I hope all of you use some R&D, rob and duplicate. Do it at your school too, right? Let's teach our kids how to. What I loved about it was he wasn't saying stay away from it, right? But if you quote that, I want citation. Stanczykiewicz 2025, R&D, rob and duplicate. All right. But that we need to use it wisely. Right? I love that, both the warnings, but also the possibilities. And I came across an article not too long ago that said, there was this technology device that people say is superficial, it causes injury, it's too fast, it's not a very clear narrator of facts. Were they talking about AI? No, this is from the 1850s. They were talking about the telegraph, right? Then another invention came out, causes hearing problems. You see here the complaints, right? People neglect invites not sent by writing. Love letters are going to suffer because of this. Again, AI, too impersonal, no. They were talking about the invention of the telephone, all right? Then there was this new contraption. It was making all this noise. It was so loud. Was it those videos on TikTok? No, it was the radio. Then there was an invention where people said, I know they're spying on us. And right, it was those drones, right? Flying around over, they were spying on, we just knew, but no, they were talking about the television. Isn't that interesting? If everybody said, like, I'm thinking about buying a pair of shoes, and then you open up and you're reading your newspaper online and there's an ad for shoes, and you're like, I think my phone is listening to me. Has that ever happened to you before? It happens to us all the time, right? But no, they thought about that the television was doing this. And it's my way of encouraging all of us. We hear some of those same concerns about AI, and I fully associate with all the concerns that Michael warned about in terms of ethics and theft and dehumanization. Yes, 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 but it is here. So just like fire can cook your food if you use it wisely, fire can also burn your house down when we don't use it wisely. And that's how I view AI, as just the latest in the technological progress. Carmen's grandfather farmed 40 acres in Michigan by himself, and that was plenty of work, first with his horse, then with his one tractor. His son now, one person, farms 3,000 acres by himself with his wife because of technology, right? That's all the, those of you with agriculture backgrounds, you know it better than me. The RTK, the GPS, all the things Uncle Rich uses on his tractor. That's how I view AI. With caution, but it's also here. And how are we seeing AI being used for fundraising? We're seeing AI used, for example, you can type in all your donor meeting notes, okay? And AI will go in and say, oh, you met with Bill and Carmen, you met with Bill and Carmen, you met with Bill and Carmen, you give all details about Bill and Carmen, and AI will go in and they'll just summarize that for you and say, for your next meeting with Bill and Carmen, here were some of the themes. You know what AI will also do? They'll look at your programs and your services and your outcomes, and they'll say, hey, those themes coming up with Bill and Carmen seem to align with these programs and services and outcomes. I interviewed one fundraiser, Travis Tester, on our podcast, and he said, AI is saving me so much time in donor research, donor preparation, writing donor letters, writing grant proposals. I have time for 4 to 6 more meetings per week with donors. AI is not going to replace the human being meeting with the donor, which our research shows the number one way to raise money is in person. AI is not changing that. And it's, when used well and properly and ethically with all the safeguards, yes, it's actually giving us more time to do what is most effective, and that's be with the donors. 4 to 6 more meetings with donors times 50 weeks. You want your advancement team to have 200 to 300 more meetings with donors, the most effective way to use money, or to raise money. Let's use AI wisely and properly. Now, here's what the donors are telling us. This survey just came out last year. The donors know AI is out there, and the takeaway here is they are just saying be transparent. And remember, Michael talked about that yesterday too, that transparency was one of those bullet points that he talked about, right? And I was watching him yesterday going, yes, it's the same thing that the donors are telling us. We get it, we know, it's not gonna prevent us from donating, just tell us how you're using it. All right, so that's confidence that we can take away from the donor perceptions of AI. All right. Let me just put the findings up there for you here, and you see those percentages, right? They're aware of AI, use it wisely. Donor privacy is an issue, right? One of the key things with AI, let's anonymize our donor information. So you don't put Bill and Carmen's name in and the dollar amount we've given. You give us a code number, you put that in, so our donor information isn't explicitly now available on the large language models of AI. So we see that happening as a best practice, but the donors know it's there. They just want us to be transparent. All right? So I want to hand it over to Greg. I know he's going to be formally introduced. I don't know if there'll be time for questions later. I will be hanging around. Remember, seek first his kingdom, and all of your needs will be met. And I hope that these data are useful as you fundraise. When you leave this conference, I believe with the bottom of my heart that you have a rare opportunity, a unique opportunity to make the world a better place. So Carmen and I ask you, just do 2 things. You go make the world a better place with the Lord by your side, that God of angel armies behind you, before you, alongside you. You go make the world a better place. And let us know how we can help. Thank you.